welcome to our panelists and welcome to the participants. This webinar on unleashing export opportunities with on-farm pre-cooling and cold chain. The webinar is going to last 1 hour. I am Michele Bruni. I am the CEO of InspiraFarms, and I'm going to be the host and moderator to this panel today. Over the next hour, we're going to go through a brief introduction of the panelists, and then we're going to go through some questions, really trying to keep it as dynamic as possible, trying to really dig into what are the opportunities and how starting the cold chain as early as possible can really make the difference. So I would like for the panelists to start introducing themselves, starting from Deirdre, and please go ahead, Deirdre.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Deirdre Hillcroft. I'm a specialist in post-harvest handling, and I've had my own consulting business for 9 years, initially based in California and now based in France. Prior to that, I worked in the commercial sector in the United States for AgroFresh and for Dole, as well as at universities in South Africa and the United States. So I come with a strong technical background combined with practical experience, which began when I grew up on a fruit farm in Zimbabwe. And as you're soon going to realize, I'm passionate about the cold chain.
Thank you, Deirdre. I would go with Alistair, then Bruce, and then Brian.
Thanks, Michele. Hello, everybody. My name's Alistair Campbell. I'm director owner of Lowetta Investments. We're a blueberry farm in Zimbabwe, 20 hectares of blueberries, soon to expand to 40 hectares. And we are the first farm in Zimbabwe to install an InspiraFarms cold room and pack shed. And we'll obviously deal with that insofar as this webinar is concerned. But very happy to be growing blueberries out of Zimbabwe. And this is our first year of exporting, and very happy with the way it's going thus far.
Thank you, Alistair. Bruce, do you want to go ahead?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bruce Lever. I'm the Managing Director of Zimflex in Zimbabwe. We are the exporters of Alistair's fruit. And we have developed the projects around Zimbabwe, blueberry projects, over the last few years. And we are in partnership with Alistair in getting his fruit to the overseas markets. So the cold chain is very instrumental in our efforts.
Thank you, Bruce. Brian? I think you're on mute, Brian.
Mute myself. How's that? Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Royston. I'm technical manager for Zimflex. I was grateful to work alongside Alistair, InspiraFarms, Stephen, who came up, and a team from Costa in trying to design the pack shed and what we needed. And grateful to be a part of the program, and looking forward to having a good discussion now.
Thanks everyone for the introduction. So I think that it's good to start with a big why. I mean, why we are discussing this. I mean, what we're seeing, I think all of us, is that African exports to Europe and beyond, including Middle East, Far East, and many other locations, has been growing steadily, and with some crops, among which berries being playing a fairly important part in that. However, the specific windows, the prices, the margins are influenced, especially for high value crops, by fairly short shelf life, and therefore capturing that value that is generated in the field. I think it's extremely important. As InspiraFarms, we try and support our partners, our customers, really to extend that shelf life and to overcome some of the challenges related to the post-harvest. So in 2019, we started working with Lowetta and delivering a pack house that really has pre-cooling capabilities, climatized packing space, and then a final product cold room that allows consolidating the produce before the shipment. Moving more, and we're going to see some of the pictures on the background. Moving really to starting the discussion, and I would like to start with the first question to Deirdre and Brian. When we talk about post-harvest management, what are the key processes that need to be developed, like from picking to packing for sensitive crops like blueberries, and what are some of the ideal conditions that can improve the quality and the efficiency of that process?
Okay, thanks, Michele. I think I warned you. I think my top three are cold chain, and cold chain. Because really, this is the silver bullet we have for produce quality, safety, and shelf life. But let's unpack that a little bit and see what's important and what we mean by cold chain. So if you're picking something in your home garden and going to consume it tomorrow, the cold chain's not that important, or better still that day. But the longer the time between harvest and consumption, the more important it is to handle the product correctly. And if we're looking at something like blueberry, we've got three really important things. One is to minimize the delays between harvest and cooling. And ideally 2 hours is about a good delay for something like blueberries, not much more. The second is pre-cooling. That's dropping that field temperature of the product as it comes in, dropping it as quickly as possible to either close to the ideal or at least to above the dew point, so you can then handle it in a pack house. And then the third thing is to maintain temperature during packing, transportation, distribution, and ideally right to the consumer. And I want to say a few more words on pre-cooling, because it's such an important part of the cold chain management. And I think the example that I'm going to quote you is North Carolina blueberry research, where they took a pallet of blueberries at 28 degrees Celsius, put it in a room at 7 degrees Celsius. After an hour, some of those outer berries had cooled down. The berries in the center of the pallet had got warmer. And those berries took 1.5 to 2 days to come down to temperature. And the consequences of that are water loss of firmness, more decay, more splits. So you've got that hot spot in the middle of the pallet that just doesn't come down. And that's the role of pre-cooling. And then after that, it's maintaining temperature, trying to keep it as constant as possible once you reach the ideal temperature. So those are really, I might have joked at the beginning about cold chain, but to break it down, there are three factors that are considered crucial.
Thank you, Deirdre. And Brian, from your point of view, what are those key processes? And
thanks, Deirdre. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. One of the most important things for us is trying to get that product to the pack house as quickly as possible and get the pulp temperature down to that sort of 10 degrees. We work on roughly 1 hour from field to pack house, and then 1 to 2 hours to get that temperature of the pulp down to as close to 10 degrees or 8 degrees as we possibly can. We often get asked why we don't bring it down to 1 degree. And I think there's two factors there. One, it would take too long to get the temperature down to 1 degree before the team can work on the berries. And the second thing is, in our temperatures now at the moment, sort of mid 30s to high 30s, it's very difficult to maintain a pack shed at 1 degree. And what we don't want is to take cold product, raise it more than 3 degrees because of the moisture condensation onto the berries, which then creates another problem down the line. So what we try and do is step the temperature down as quickly as possible, get the field heat out. And I think we'll hear from Alistair just now what is field, what the pulp temperature is coming in from the field. But I imagine it's in the low 40s. We try and get that field heat out as soon as we can, down to 8 to 10 degrees, and then we can work on the product. It gives us a couple of hours to work on that, and then we step it down finally into the sort of holding room at 1 degree. So it is two processes, but we feel that it's a nice step down chain. It's manageable, and we're able to get the temperature down and work with the product quite quickly. So I think those are the main points for me. Deirdre had mentioned it before, but the crucial thing is to actually measure pulp temperature. That's really key. And obviously as close to the center of that pallet of berries as possible rather than cooling the outside.
Thank you, Brian and Deirdre. Alistair and Bruce, I mean, what is key to guarantee that export quality, and what can really help to make the producer and the exporter operations more efficient? Maybe we can start from Alistair and then Bruce.
Thanks, Makeda. Yeah, I think Bruce is, I mean, as the marketing guru, is best to answer that. I mean, we you know, as an exporter of top quality blueberries, we're under no illusion that we have to market ourselves as a premium berry. African blue has to be a premium berry. So we have to pay attention all the way along the line, not only to the cold chain, but there's the bloom on the berry as well, to make sure that that gets to market with as much bloom on as possible. That means less handling, and that means more efficiency insofar as your systems are concerned. So just to reiterate what Deirdre and Brian have said, I mean, it is crucial. And, you know, guys have different modes of transport to get the berries to the pack house as quickly as possible. We're very fortunate with our setup that we can use three-wheeler motorbikes that go around that pick up the berries. Even if they're not a full load, we pick them up, we get them there as quickly as possible. So we're able to get from picking to pack house. We try and work on 45 minutes, but at the moment we've got it down to half an hour. So that makes a huge difference insofar as that is concerned. And the secondly is obviously dealing with getting that berry down to temperature. Today, reaping today, the hottest berry came in at 42 degrees. So you think about getting that down to that 8 to 10 degrees, but also in the requisite time frame. It's it's all very well having a system that can bring it down to that temperature, but if that's going to take an hour and a half, it really does put pressure on the pack house insofar as getting the tonnage through that you need. So with the pre-coolers that we've got in place, that when we load it, it's built for 900 kgs, but if we're loading it at the moment at probably 600 kgs, and we're getting through between 45 and 55 minutes that we're getting it down to that pack house temperature, which is excellent, and allows us to get through quite a bit of stock during the day. So when you talk about getting it to Bruce and they're QCing it, they're holding cold rooms at the airport, they expect us to get it there in with full bloom on, with the pulp temperature at between 1 and 3 degrees, and ready for export. And they expect to do very little QC. We've got to make sure that we have the cold chain in place to do most of that work. And thankfully, with what we've got at the moment, we're able to do that. But the customer, we've talked about it. You've talked about it in your introduction when it comes to getting it to far markets. You're talking about the Far East now, and some of that stuff getting to Europe on sea freight. You're looking at 3 to 4 weeks before it hits the shelf of the supermarket. So you've got to make sure that you have taken care of that berry and make sure that the cold chain is perfect. Otherwise, it's going to arrive on the supermarket shelf, and if it only lasts 2 or 3 days after that, you're going to have a few angry customers. So cold chain. I don't think we can get away from that. But it's what you invest in, and the quality of that cold chain that's so important insofar as we're concerned.
Thank you, Alistair. And we're going to get back to the to the investment point shortly. Bruce, from your point of view, that export quality, what are the relevant factors?
I think for us, the key is that we can have confidence in the product. So we draw product from various farms around the country. Each have got their own conditions. Each are going through a different process. And so for us, the most important thing is that we can have confidence in that product. As Alistair says, when we get the product to the consolidation point, we should not have to treat that product before it goes onto the transport, whether that be air or sea. So we don't want to have to retreat it when it arrives with us. So from our point of view, having confidence that the product has been through a chain through the cold chain and going through the correct steps and going through the correct stages, so that we don't suddenly have problems down the line. So that's the most important thing. And I think from a grower's point of view as well, is to ensure that those steps are followed carefully, so that they don't have losses through the chain. Because at each step, if we don't get it right, there's going to be losses, and the consequences are dire economically. So really, an efficient chain and having the confidence that that product has been through that efficient chain is the most important thing. And we certainly know that with Alistair's process on the farm, we know that we can be confident with that, because each step is maintained.
Thank you. And Alistair, what were the challenges that made you decide for the investment, and the most relevant differences that you're seeing or that you've seen during this season?
You know, Makedi, we were lucky that we were a greenfield site, so I didn't have the temptation of maybe converting an old cold room, or an old pea cold room, or horticultural cold room that existed previously, which I know that has tormented some other farmers, because it's a huge investment. And when you get to the cold chain, you've sort of paid for the plants and paid for the structures, and you think that you're done, and don't worry about the cold chain. We can just reap into a 2-degree cold room, and that'll be fine. And luckily, with the guidance of the guys from Costa and Brian and Bruce, who had done their research, and Steve Wormold as well, that got onto me, is that the importance, and then obviously talking to you a bit later, just suddenly dawns on you the importance of the cold chain, particularly with such a high value product. And it's one of those steps that you can't skimp on it. So thankfully, I saw the light early on that we needed to take this very seriously, and make sure that not only we invested in a proper pack house, but invested in proper technology. That's the key for me. And I want to thank you for that, because those chats that we had, I don't think many farmers in Zim have had those conversations, insofar as it's not just a pack house. A pack house is not just a pack house. There's so many variables. There's so much technology that goes into making sure that your life is easier when it comes to pushing through volumes of blueberries, and getting it cooled down in time, and making sure you're getting the tonnage through the pack house and keeping up with everything. So in retrospect now, I can sit back and go, crikey, we've got a really good facility, and I'd like to take credit for it, but the credit must go to the guidance that I received, insofar as getting it sorted out, and making the investment, and listening to the guidance, because insofar as the design, the pre-coolers where they are, the pack room space, obviously the finishing room. But I think the biggest thing for me was, apart from the technology, was the modular format of the concept that Inspira have. Most would have to invest, or the old way of investing was that you would have to invest in your pack house to cater for your year 3 production, when you're in peak production, and you're sitting with a pack house in the meantime that you can hear echoes. And for me, it was the ability to plan with you guys phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 to cater for the tonnages as you build up to your capacity. And that for me is the key as well, is that when we need to add on, it's just modular, and it's there's no big redesign. There might be a few little wires that have to be placed in different places, and a few bits of maneuvering. But the bottom line is the modular design and the technology that we have has not been seen in Zimbabwe, and I'm glad that we invested in it.
Thank you, Alistair. And actually, for us, it's we are proud as well of really working with you, and having customers that can help us prove how we can all play a role in bringing that produce to consumers in a better shape, and generating more value out of that. And out of the value, just a follow-up question: can you tell us a bit more about your experience with the kind of pack out rates and shrinkage, and what have been the implications for you? Because then after that, I would like to go back to Brian and Deirdre to bring up some of the kind of more technical aspects behind that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that people lose sight of the little 1%ers, the little 2%ers when you were dealing with a volume crop, and you tend to lose sight of those little gains, those little 1%ers. And for us, was that gross pack out as opposed to the net pack out? What would that percentage be that we would have to pack out at, and to cater for the shrinkage before getting to market? And the industry average is around about that 5% for sea freight. Maybe you can get away with 4% on air freight. But as we've gained confidence in the system, in the pack house and our systems, particularly the way that we move it through the pre-cooler, we turn on the humidifiers there to get the humidity up to where it should be, around about 90%. Get it out and able to pack it as quickly as possible and get it down to 2 degrees. We found that we can get that gross pack out down to around about 2% on air freight and 3.5% to 4% on sea freight. And when you work that out, the value that creates insofar as a season is concerned, when you're at full capacity, it's a huge saving, and it's something that we've really paid attention to this year, just to get our systems in place. So when we do have bigger volumes next year, we have good systems in place, and we're able to cater for that increased volume, and able to also to achieve that gross to net pack out at on average around about 2.5% to 3%, as opposed to the industry average of 5%. So for us, just that little 2.5% saving, as I said, work that out over 300, 400 tons next season, and you've got a very big figure. So from that perspective, in having efficient cooling technology, state-of-the-art cooling technology, you work out those numbers, and basically it nearly pays for your pack house, or half your pack house, by paying attention to those numbers. And we all know the market. I mean, you're not going to get paid for giving the market more kgs, but you're going to get penalized for giving them less kgs. And we've managed to find a number there, and we'll continue to explore to get that number to the optimum number that is acceptable and arrives in the market in the right condition and the right weight. But that's the one thing we've seen this season: with efficient cooling, with state-of-the-art cooling, you can beat the industry norm, and that's a huge saving for us.
Thank you, Alistair. Deirdre and Brian, like the temperature, humidity, pressure, airflow. I mean, when we design, we work with about 60 different variables to try and get to that crop-specific fine tuning. But more from the science and technique around that. Can you tell us a bit of what you consider is really important in adjusting, in designing for specific crops? Maybe we start with Brian and then Deirdre. You're on mute, Brian. I'm sorry.
We go. I keep on falling for that one. So I think one of the key things for us is our peak harvest period is sort of over the last couple of weeks, and maybe a couple of 1 or 2 more weeks to come. And this is generally the hottest time of the year. We refer to it in Zimbabwe as suicide month because of the temperatures. It's hot and it's very, very dry. And in the last 2 weeks, saying it's very, very dry, we've had some rain as well. So I think for us, the key thing was how do we get that temperature down to 8 to 10 degrees without damaging the berry? I think with when you've got to bring it down 30 degrees within an hour, there's quite a potential for loss of and dehydration in that fruit. So I think with the discussions that we had with InspiraFarms and Steve Wormold, in fact, in that picture you can see there, they've got the humidifier on the incoming cold room that is working whilst they're drawing the temperature down. So whilst we're pulling the temperature down, we're actually humidifying the room so that we are making sure that we minimize some of that moisture loss. And I think that was probably the most important for us, certainly in that chain, was that first sort of 3 hours of field to pack shed and pack shed down to being able to be worked on in the grading shed. So I think from my side that really is key.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, and to add to that, we've already talked about pulp temperature and the importance of bringing the pulp temperature down, and the importance of bringing it down throughout that stack of berries. So in order to do that, the air has to flow past each fruit, which means there's got to be enough air pressure, and that air has to go through the whole stack. And air will always take the path of least resistance. So you want to direct that flow and have sufficient flow to go beyond that, to go past the fruit. But I also want to go and talk about water loss a little bit, because I've so often heard people say, oh, pre-cooling causes water loss. Yes, there is some water loss. Having high humidity helps, but it's really a myth in a way, because if you don't pre-cool that fruit, you will lose much more water. Fruit at a higher temperature loses a lot more water to the atmosphere than fruit at a lower temperature. And that's, it's not controversial. It's the laws of physics. It's not even alternative facts. But one of the things I just lost that thought there. One of the things I also want to mention is, I truly had a blank. Okay, forget it. I'll just go to the next one.
We're discussing about the importance of, of keeping that water in the fruit, and how pre-cooling, can be done while keeping that water in the fruit.
Okay, nothing like having the camera on and losing what you were going to say. But I think I get it back. What I do want to point out is we focus a lot on water loss because it has such an important effect on firmness. And if you think about horticultural produce, we're selling really expensive water. So we've got to guard that water. And cooling is one of the ways to do it, surprisingly enough.
Yeah, and for us, I think there is, a lot has to do as well with a lot of work that goes on in the background, meaning different crops might have different sensitivity to, what is the evaporating temperature of the machines, what are the pressures in the pre-coolers, and how do you play with all those different variables to respond to the needs of that specific fruit. And probably building on that, I think that one of the things we're seeing, and one of the things that I think InspiraFarms stands for, is the, I think, enormous opportunity that a lot of crops represent in sub-Saharan Africa, to provide as well, high quality and kind of high quality standard produce into high value markets, and responding as well to that increasing demand, and as well trying to do it in the most efficient and sustainable way. And but I was thinking, Bruce, can you tell us a bit more, like, of all the, you're working with many producers, what can an exporting farmer expect in terms of return on investment by, really investing in pre-cooling, investing in cold chain, investing in capturing that value that has been so hard to generate in the field?
I think really the question should be, can a farmer not afford to do it? Because it's no longer an option. You can't afford not to do it. You cannot, it's a very competitive market out there, and the market is getting more and more demanding. And we need to deliver perfect fruit. With the competitiveness, that means that we need to be able to sea freight and to air freight at any given time. Sea freighting from Zimbabwe is, we're a landlocked country, and we're quite far from the port, which means that we need to ensure that our produce has gone through a proper cold chain in order to do that, and in order to get to the shelf of the supermarket or the customer, the end customer, and the final consumer in good shape, and for it to have a reasonable shelf life once it's there. So in my view, there's actually no option but to invest in really good technology for cooling and the cold chain. As far as return on investment, I think if you don't do it, you're not going to get a reasonable return on investment ultimately, and you're not going to be competitive in the market. your costs are going to be up because somebody somewhere along the cold chain has to deal with that product when it gets warm or when it doesn't make it through the whole process of sea freight or air freight. So really, there is no option. It's not an option.
Oh, thank you, Alistair. Do you have any comments or anything to to build on what Bruce was just saying?
No, I think he's spot on, and he's quite right. We've discussed it at length before as well. Is that he said it when he previously spoke about they have to have the confidence. The marketers have to have the confidence in your berry as the grower. They have on their plate insofar as getting your product to market, and they need to know that you've done all you can on farm to make sure that it's in tip-top condition. So I think that they've got to have confidence in you, but the only way that the marketers and in turn the supermarkets, in turn the customers have confidence in your berry, which in our case is the African blueberry, a premium berry, we have to behave like premium farmers, and doing that is growing the crop correctly, obviously, but adhering to proper first world cold chain technology, and it's not an option. You have to invest in that. If you're going to go into a high value crop, a blueberry crop, for instance, you have to have that state of the art cold chain. It's non-negotiable. So I totally agree with him. And as I said, you're dealing with a premium berry. We're marketing as a premium berry, so we have to invest in premium infrastructure. It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah. Thank you. And probably a question to everyone, because I think that we often reflect when deciding as well where to place our bets in terms of new geographies or new products. We're seeing like that the interest of importers, wholesalers, retailers out of specific windows and for specific high value crops from Africa is increasing a lot. So that demand is growing. And what we're seeing as well is that, the coverage of specific windows that are not covered by other, probably more established, sourcing geographies can be an advantage. But on the other end, we know as well that, if you want, like a consignment is as good as the worst batch. And at times this applies as well to a whole sector or to a whole industry. I mean, we've seen plenty of examples, unfortunately, on yearly basis of, countries that get embargoed because, there is few people that are not exactly following the rules and issues like these. Can probably all of you give us a bit of vision on what are the key challenges and the key opportunities for export markets from Africa? I mean, how do you see the sector evolving? What do you think are the key investments that needs to be in place for the sector to grow? Because I think that, or at least from our point of view, if the sector grows, I think there's going to be advantages for everyone. And if we do that, sustainably, that is going to be an advantage for farmers as well as for consumers that at times are really far away from those farmers. I don't know, anyone wants to start?
Yeah, I'll say a few things. I think that we start with a continent that has good ties to Europe and has some links to the East, even if not that many. There's also a lot of technology and know-how already in countries. South Africa's been exporting successfully for a long time. Flowers have been coming from Kenya a long time. So I think there's enough people that have shown that it works really well, and there are a lot of opportunities, but it does come back to that quality. And I'm going to speak as a consumer in the European market. I've been into my local supermarket and sadly seen Manch 2 peas from Zimbabwe that are terrible, avocados from Kenya that you couldn't pay me to buy, and sadly citrus from South Africa. Now I pick on those because as an African, I'm always looking at the quality from there. There are a lot of other examples. I'd like to blame the cold chain in my local supermarket equally. But I think that's that you get a poor reputation from one bad batch. So it's not just about producing an excellent crop in the field, it's about doing everything you can to maintain that quality. You can't improve it, you can only maintain it. So, I feel like we're saying the same thing again in many ways, but unless we have good handling practices, good maturity, good control, and then keep that cold chain, maintain that cold chain throughout, we'll never get the quality that's required by a European importer. And as a final word, I'm looking forward to seeing blueberries because it's something I don't see very often in the supermarkets around me. I'm in a little rural town and we don't see them. So please get it right. I want them.
Thanks, Deirdre. Who wants to go next? Alistair?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's imperative, as I said before, that you know, and Bruce and I were talking about this, that blueberries, the more and more that blueberries are produced, it's fast becoming a commodity. And, you know, you've got to make sure that you're on the ball insofar as your competitive edges are concerned, and making sure that you fine tune all your sort of chains, the links insofar as the berry from growing it to getting it to the market. And as Bruce mentioned, you know, the market's getting more competitive and the buyers are getting more discerning. You know, a blueberry is no longer a blueberry as it was 5 years ago. And, you know, people are now talking about taste profiles, about size. So genetics is hugely important, but they want to ultimately, at the end of the day, they want to open a punnet of blueberries, as Deirdre says, wherever you are in the world, and they want to make sure that it's full of bloom and that there's a crunch to it. And the last thing they want is seeing something there that's got no bloom on it. And when you put it between your thumb and your forefinger, it just squashes like jam, you know, and nobody wants to see that. And as most of the panelists have said, you know, you're only as good as your last batch, and your last batch has to be your best batch. And make sure that you're paying attention the whole time to your cold chain, to your growing, but also to your QCing processes, making sure that you're only letting the best berries leave your pack shed, because ultimately, if you're going to compete in a very feisty international market, you've got to make sure that people say, I want that blueberry because I know that I'm going to get quality. And I know that every time I open that punnet, there's going to be a nice crunchy blueberry full of bloom and at the right size as well. So, you know, the market has progressed. You know, 8 to 12 millimeter was acceptable 2 or 3 years ago. And then it's tightened up a bit now. Everyone's talking 14 to 17 millimeter that's acceptable. You know, no one wants the smaller stuff. No one wants the stuff that doesn't taste so nice. They want the bigger berry. They want the better taste profile, and they want it delivered to the market as though it left the farm yesterday. That's the key. That's how fussy the consumer is. So we've got to make sure that as the farmer, we, as I said, invest in the right genetics, but making sure we get the berry to market as though it was picked yesterday. And you can only do that with the best cold chain in place. It's simple as that.
No, especially when you lose, you know, 1 day of shelf life every hour of delay in bringing down pulp temperature.
Yeah. And, you know, the interesting one was we had a truck breakdown the other day. It wasn't cooling on the way to the airport, arrived at the airport at sort of 7-8 degrees. And Brian was on the phone. What's going on? You know, a bit of a catastrophe on our hands here. But when they measured took the temperature, the pulp temperature of the berry, even though it was the ambient temperature, the outside temperature of the berry was 7-8 degrees, the pulp temperature was 1.8 degrees. And that just goes to show that if you've invested properly in that cold chain technology and you've used it efficiently and properly, and you've got that pulp temperature down, it goes to show that even with a small hiccup, if you've done it properly right from the get-go, right from the beginning, that even when there is a little glitch, you get away with it. But if there's a glitch when you haven't done it properly from the start, that's when you pay the price. So that's just a small example of half an hour, 45 minutes to the airport, that there wasn't proper cooling in place. But because the process was done correctly at the beginning, you can maybe get away with it. But that's not the case with the guys that haven't invested in that proper pack shed technology.
That's such a good example of a good cold chain. I mean, that's one I'm going to be quoting in the future because it demonstrates the value of good pulp temperature and the benefit that that extends throughout the journey.
Thank you. Thanks. Bruce?
I think there's not a lot else to say. Except that the market is becoming more and more competitive. Consumers are becoming more and more demanding and discerning as well. And we we are only as good as our last delivery to the consumer. And so we need to be aware that timing in the market is crucial, and we need to be as flexible as possible. We need to have the ability to push the product by sea, by air. I've said it before already, but we need to be able to do that in a short space of time. And if we do not have the proper facilities, we're not going to be able to do that. So it's timing, it's ensuring that product is consistently on track and on target with temperatures.
Okay, thank you. Brian, do you have comments on these? I mean, from the technical point of view, and from the management of the programs and everything that comes as well before that.
Yeah, from my side, the good news, Deirdre, is there's a lot of blueberries coming your way. I expect, blueberry production or export out of Zim to double, if not triple, in the next year. Obviously, we're a small group of growers in Zimbabwe. We don't represent everything, and we certainly will be expanding. That being said, there's been a lot of comments about the pressures that are coming from the marketplace. So we really need to up our game. Even the facilities that we have in place at the moment, they're not geared to handle the volume that's going to be coming at us. We rely heavily on growers like Lowetter to be able to have systems in place that manage the product well and give us the confidence to go back to the market and say, hey guys, we stand behind our product here. So I think there's increasing pressures from the marketplace on facilities that we have existing here at the moment. So yeah, it's really fantastic to work with InspiraFarms, and obviously the growers that are they're working with you guys. Just to comment, at the start of this project, there was an enormous amount of backwards and forwards between ourselves as Zimflex and Costa, who own the genetics of the varieties we work with, as well as Alistair on the farm. And yeah, we just had so many different queries, and trying to get the system to work, absolutely perfectly according to what we needed. There were crate weights, there was fruit weights, there was so much information requested of you guys, and the system that was built on all of those specifics, and the result is, I think, a fantastic unit that works really well and gives us as Zimflex the confidence.
Thank you. And I think from our point of view, why as well we consider on-farm pre-cooling and starting the cold chain as soon as possible is important as well if we think about what the industry requires. Let's imagine it as well as part of a pre-competitive investment. I mean, to lift kind of all boats. I mean, without that, you couldn't increase the volumes by thinking about recooling or dropping down temperature in like larger refrigerated warehouses, airport terminals, or cross-docking facilities. If every product would have to be recooled in those facilities, you would limit the capacity of the system to scale up. While if those facilities can really focus on a quick throughput and really holding the temperature while the transportation, whether it's air, sea, or land, is loaded and unloaded, that can bring scalability to the system, or at least that is part of how we see the system evolving and kind of cold chain logistics in Africa. Now I think that we have a few questions that are as well coming from the participants. So maybe we can take a couple of them before moving to wrapping up. I think there is one initial question that is really, how critical is the on-farm pre-cooling to be able to have access to post-farm cooling or to the whole cold chain? I don't know if anyone wants to take that question. I mean, how important is to have the pre-cooling to be able to access the cold chain and the cold chain further down the line?
Well, from a theoretical point of view, it's incredibly important, but I don't really understand if the person is asking if you have it on farm or if you're using a cold chain somewhere else. And if it's a cold chain somewhere else, then it comes down to the delay again. How soon till you get it there?
Yeah, probably another angle from my point of view is as well that, you know, it's if the cold chain is not is not preserved until the consumers, is completely irrelevant and probably a bad investment to have pre-cooling on farm.
Yeah.
Meaning once the product has been cooled down, it shouldn't be exposed to to high temperature unless it's the moment for the products to be eaten, because otherwise it will expose the product to a lot of condensation issues or potential mold growth, and so it will basically spoil, if I can interpret another angle to that question. There's another one that I think it's more along, like more asking about what are the options for smaller scale farmers and less high value crops to use cold chains in Africa, from what capacities, which crops. Probably I'll take that briefly. I mean, I think the markets for the crop is important. I mean, if the markets that are going to take the produce is not really linked into the supply, into the cold chain, maybe is not the best investment unless you have a really short supply chain and you want to manage and buffer volatility. I think there is solutions for each type of dimension. As InspiraFarms, we try to start with the let's say with the 3 to 5 tons per day of throughput as a kind of starting point, depending on the different crops. I think one last question that we've received, and maybe we can see if any of the panelists then as questions for other panelists, is really like, how different are the cold chain requirements for shipping with air freight versus the one for sea freight? I don't know, probably Bruce, I think either Bruce or Brian, you're the specialist on these. So can you tell us a bit more of the key differences in terms of requirements between air freight and sea freight?
I think really obviously the sea freight is going to be taking a much longer time, and so it's absolutely critical that the protocols are followed to the T, and that there is no compromise made there. You have a bit more buffer with air freight because of simply of the time factor, and so with sea freight you need to ensure that every single berry is of top quality, that the berries have been picked and harvested correctly, and that cold chain has been followed all the way through. So really, what we try to do is we try to treat the product or both systems in the same way, so that we have the option to go left or right. We need to have the flexibility, and we need to be able to work with both air freight and sea freight at short notice. So our recommendation to our growers is to treat the product the same all the way through, whether we're doing it for sea or air.
Thank you. Thanks. Any of the panelists has questions for anyone else in the panel?
Yeah, I was wondering which port you're exporting out of when you go by sea.
It's Cape Town and Durban.
So you still have to ship to Cape Town or to Durban? Oh, so it really adds time onto. So it's like a series of questions here. My last question is, what's your typical time if you're going by sea from when it leaves Zimbabwe to when it reaches the market?
Into Europe, it's around 28 days.
And then there's some distribution time within that too, that takes up time.
Yeah, correct.
So yeah, it's that time temperature combination again. You know, you got to get the temperature right because you don't have time to play with. Absolutely.
I think that the sea freighting from Zimbabwe is a true test because we're right on the edge of the time limits with most products. So the successful sea freighting is key, and it's hats off to Alistair, who's been able to have really good landings in Europe, and that's simply because of his cold chain.
Thank you. Any other questions from any of the panelists or any other final remarks?
Just from me, Makele, thanks very much for hosting this webinar. I think it's been very fruitful to talk to the other guys and to Deirdre as well, and to you guys at Inspira for what you've created for us here in Zim. It's a very new business and a high value berry business, and we're so glad here at Loetta that we've invested in your technology, and we're expanding. We're going to be doing expansions with the cold room and with the pack shed. So we've got a lot of dealings to come, but we're really, really glad that we went with you guys, and the results are speaking for themselves. So just from my perspective, thank you very much for what you've done, and I'm sure you're going to get a lot more business from a few other farmers in Zimbabwe because of this sort of flagship pack shed that you created for us. So thanks a lot from my side.
Thank you, Alistair. And for me, I hope as well that we're going to find a way of financing our customers in Zimbabwe as well as we do, in most other African countries. At the moment, financing clients in Zimbabwe is not easy, but I hope that we're going to be able to find a solution to that as well in 2021, hopefully.
Yeah, that would make a big difference. I mean, it's a capital intensive project to set up, so all manner and means of financing options would be greatly appreciated. So that would be a good new avenue to explore in future.
Thank you. Bruce, Brian, Deirdre, do you have any final remarks before I wrap up? I think I'll take that as a no. So I would like to thank you all. I think that we have learned a lot about how relevant is pre-cooling to preserve quality, and as well to build that shelf life that is needed to respond to the needs of supply chains that are fairly long. There is more questions coming in that we're going to try and respond. Specifically, we deal as well with avocados and other tropicals such as mangoes, bananas. Yes, to the questions on sweet potatoes, we're actively working on that as well, and we are active as well in both in Ethiopia and Ghana to some of those questions. For me, it's like I think that Loetta and a lot of the work that we try and do in Zimbabwe is something that makes me extremely proud, and I'm as well really looking forward for the global COVID situation to ease up and be able to to travel again to Zimbabwe quite soon. And I think that it would be relevant as well to thank Stephen Wormald that has been really on behalf of InspiraFarm, really the one building the networks and the relationships of trust that I think are fundamental to work together. So regardless of who is the customer or who is the one selling or the one buying, thinking that we all have to do our part for the system to work. And so I would like to thank, Stephen as well. And maybe on that note, I would like to wish, everyone a good rest of the afternoon and of the week. Thank you so much to the over 100 participants and to our 4 panelists. Thanks as well to Paula Rodriguez for organizing the webinar and doing all the background work together as well with Fernando Coculun, Patricia Pliego, and Ricardo Morales. Thanks everyone. It's been a pleasure, and hope to see you all soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Michele. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Michele.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, Michele. Thank you, Paula, and thank you, Stevie Wonder. Cheers.
Bye.